The Nowata Methodist Church is happy to produce a lot of different content for the edification of Christ's church throughout the world. This daily segment that you're listening to right now corresponds with the Daily Bible Reading Challenge, which is hosted by Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. If you want to download the list of readings that they publish for yourself or learn more about this challenge, this initiative, go to biblereading.christkirk.com. I'm Jeffrey Rickman. I'm the pastor here in Nowata, and I read from the Berean Standard Bible, which you can also find at berean.bible. Consider subscribing to this podcast to be a part of this daily effort to grow in familiarity with and love of God's holy word. Let's dive in for today. Hey there, I'm Jeffrey Rickman. Happy to be reading with you today. Hope it's a time where the Lord speaks to you, and even if that doesn't happen, I hope you are brought a lot closer to Him throughout all this. So we're going to pick up today in Numbers chapter 28. Let's attend upon God's word together. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Command the Israelites and say to them, see that you present to me at its appointed time the food for my offerings by fire as a pleasing aroma to me. And tell them that this is the offering made by fire you are to present to the Lord as a regular burnt offering each day, 2 unblemished year-old male lambs. Offer 1 lamb in the morning and the other at twilight, along with 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering, mixed with 1/4 hin of oil from pressed olives. This is a regular burnt offering established at Mount Sinai as a pleasing aroma, an offering made by fire to the Lord. The drink offering accompanying each lamb shall be 1/4 hin. Pour out the offering of fermented drink to the Lord in the sanctuary area, and offer the 2nd lamb at twilight, with the same grain offering and drink offering as in the morning. It is an offering made by fire, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. On the Sabbath day, present 2 unblemished year-old male lambs, accompanied by a grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, as well as a drink offering. This is the burnt offering for every Sabbath, in addition to the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. At the beginning of every month, you are to present to the Lord a burnt offering of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, along with 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering with each bull, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering with the ram, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering with each lamb. This is a burnt offering, a pleasing aroma, an offering made by fire to the Lord. Their drink offerings shall be 1/2 a hin of wine with each bull, 1/3 of a hin with the ram, and 1/4 of a hin with each lamb. This is the monthly burnt offering to be made at each new moon throughout the year. In addition to the regular burnt offering with its drink offering, 1 male goat is to be presented to the Lord as a sin offering. The 14th day of the 1st month is the Lord's Passover. On the 15th day of this month, there shall be a feast. For 7 days unleavened bread is to be eaten. On the 1st day there is to be a sacred assembly. You must not do any regular work. Present to the Lord an offering made by fire, a burnt offering of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old, all unblemished. The grain offering shall consist of fine flour mixed with oil. Offer 3/10 of an ephah with each bull, 2/10 of an ephah with the ram, and 1/10 of an ephah with each of the 7 lambs, including 1 male goat as a sin offering to make atonement for you. You are to present these in addition to the regular morning burnt offering. Offer the same food each day for 7 days as an offering made by fire, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. It is to be offered with its drink offering and the regular burnt offering. On the seventh day you shall hold a sacred assembly. You must not do any regular work. On the day of first fruits, when you present an offering of new grain to the Lord during the Feast of Weeks, you are to hold a sacred assembly. You must not do any regular work. Present a burnt offering of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old as a pleasing aroma to the Lord, together with their grain offerings of fine flour mixed with oil. 3/10 of an ephah with each bull, 2/10 of an ephah with the ram, and 1/10 of an ephah with each of the 7 lambs. Include 1 male goat to make atonement for you. Offer them with their drink offerings in addition to the regular burnt offering and its grain offering. The animals must be unblemished. Numbers chapter 29. On the first day of the 7th month you are to hold a sacred assembly, and you must not do any regular work. This will be a day for you to sound the trumpets. As a pleasing aroma to the Lord, you are to present a burnt offering of 1 young bull, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, together with their grain offerings of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah with the bull, 2/10 of an ephah with the ram, and 1/10 of an ephah with each of the 7 male lambs. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering to make atonement for you. These are in addition to the monthly and daily burnt offerings with their prescribed grain offerings and drink offerings. They are a pleasing aroma, an offering made by fire to the Lord. On the 10th day of the 7th month, you are to hold a sacred assembly, and you shall humble yourselves. You must not do any work. Present as a pleasing aroma to the Lord a burnt offering of 1 young bull, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, together with their grain offerings of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah with the bull, 2/10 of an ephah with the ram, and 1/10 of an ephah with each of the 7 lambs. Include 1 male goat for a sin offering in addition to the sin offering of atonement and the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offerings. On the 15th day of the 7th month, you are to hold a sacred assembly. You must not do any regular work, and you shall observe a feast to the Lord for 7 days. As a pleasing aroma to the Lord, you are to present an offering made by fire, a burnt offering of 13 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, along with the grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, with each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 of an ephah with each of the 2 rams, and 1/10 of an ephah with each of the 14 lambs. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 2nd day you are to present 12 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, along with the grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs, according to the number prescribed. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 3rd day you are to present 11 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, along with the grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs according to the number prescribed. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 4th day you are to present 10 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, along with the grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs according to the number prescribed. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 5th day, you are to present 9 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, along with the grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs, according to the number prescribed. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 6th day, you are to present 8 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, along with the grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs, according to the number prescribed. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 7th day, you are to present 7 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, along with the grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs, according to the number prescribed. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 8th day, you are to hold a solemn assembly. You must not do any regular work. As a pleasing aroma to the Lord, you are to present an offering made by fire, a burnt offering of 1 bull, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old, all unblemished, along with the grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs, according to the number prescribed. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. You are to present these offerings to the Lord at your appointed times, in addition to your vow and free will offerings, whether burnt offerings, grain offerings, drink offerings, or peace offerings. So Moses spoke all this to the Israelites, just as the Lord had commanded him. Numbers chapter 30. Then Moses said to the heads of the tribes of Israel, "This is what the Lord has commanded. If a man makes a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to obligate himself by a pledge, he must not break his word. He must do everything he has promised. And if a woman in her father's house during her youth makes a vow to the Lord or obligates herself by a pledge, and her father hears about her vow or pledge but says nothing to her, then all the vows or pledges by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her father prohibits her on the day he hears about it, then none of the vows or pledges by which she has bound herself shall stand. The Lord will absolve her because her father has prohibited her. If a woman marries while under a vow or rash promise by which she has bound herself, and her husband hears of it but says nothing to her on that day, then the vows or pledges by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her husband prohibits her when he hears of it, he nullifies the vow that binds her of the rash promise she has made, and the Lord will absolve her. Every vow a widow or divorced woman pledges to fulfill is binding on her. If a woman in her husband's house has made a vow or put herself under an obligation with an oath, and her husband hears of it but says nothing to her and does not prohibit her, then all the vows or pledges by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her husband nullifies them on the day he hears of them, then nothing that came from her lips, whether her vows or pledges, shall stand. Her husband has nullified them, and the Lord will absolve her. Her husband may confirm or nullify any vow or any sworn pledge to deny herself. But if her husband says nothing to her from day to day, then he confirms all the vows and pledges that bind her. He has confirmed them because he has said nothing to her on the day he heard about them. But if he nullifies them after he hears of them, then he will bear her iniquity. These are the statutes that the Lord commanded Moses concerning the relationship between a man and his wife, and between a father and a young daughter still in his home. Numbers chapter 31. And the Lord said to Moses, "Take vengeance on the Midianites for the Israelites, and after that you will be gathered to your people." So Moses told the people, "Arm some of your men for war, that they may go against the Midianites and execute the Lord's vengeance on them. Send into battle 1,000 men from each tribe of Israel." So 1,000 men were recruited from each tribe of Israel, 12,000 armed for war. And Moses sent the 1,000 from each tribe into battle, along with Phinehas, son of Eleazar the priest, who took with him the vessels of the sanctuary and the trumpets for signaling. Then they waged war against Midian, as the Lord had commanded Moses, and they killed every male. Among the slain were Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. They also killed Balaam, son of Beor, with the sword. The Israelites captured the Midianite women and their children, and they plundered all their herds, flocks, and goods. Then they burned all the cities where the Midianites had lived, as well as all their encampments, and carried away all the plunder and spoils, both people and animals. They brought the captives, spoils, and plunder to Moses, to Eleazar the priest, and to the congregation of Israel at the camp on the plains of Moab, by the Jordan, across from Jericho. And Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all the leaders of the congregation went to meet them outside the camp. But Moses was angry with the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, who were returning from the battle. "Have you spared all the women?" he asked them. "Look, these women caused the sons of Israel, through the counsel of Balaam, to turn unfaithfully against the Lord at Peor, so that the plague struck the congregation of the Lord. So now kill all the boys, as well as every woman who has had relations with a man, but spare for yourselves every girl who has never had relations with a man. All of you who have killed a person or touched the dead are to remain outside the camp for 7 days. On the 3rd day and the 7th day you are to purify both yourselves and your captives. And purify every garment and leather good, everything made of goat's hair, and every article of wood." Then Eleazar the priest said to the soldiers who had gone into battle, "This is the statute of the law which the Lord has commanded Moses. Only the gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, and lead, everything that can withstand the fire, must be put through the fire, and it will be clean. But it must still be purified with the water of purification, and everything that cannot withstand the fire must pass through water. On the 7th day, you are to wash your clothes, and you will be clean. After that, you may enter the camp." The Lord said to Moses, "You and Eleazar the priest and the family heads of the congregation are to take account of what was captured, both man and beast. Then divide the captives between the troops who went out to battle and the rest of the congregation. Set aside a tribute for the Lord from what belongs to the soldiers who went into battle, 1 out of every 500, whether persons, cattle, donkeys, or sheep. Take it from their half and give it to Eleazar the priest as an offering to the Lord. From the Israelites' half, take 1 out of every 50, whether persons, cattle, donkeys, sheep, or other animals, and give them to the Levites who keep charge of the tabernacle of the Lord." So Moses and Eleazar the priest did as the Lord had commanded Moses, and this plunder remained from the spoils the soldiers had taken: 675,000 sheep, 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 women who had not slept with a man. This was the half portion for those who had gone to war. 337,500 sheep, including a tribute to the Lord of 675,000. No, just 675. Then 36,000 cattle, including a tribute to the Lord of 72. 30,500 donkeys, including a tribute to the Lord of 61. And 16,000 people, including a tribute to the Lord of 32. Moses gave tribute to Eleazar the priest as an offering for the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. From the Israelites' half, which Moses had set apart from the men who had gone to war, this half belonged to the congregation: 337,500 sheep, 36,000 cattle, 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 people. From the Israelites' half, Moses took one out of every 50 persons and animals and gave them to the Levites who kept charge of the tabernacle of the Lord, as the Lord had commanded him. Then the officers who were over the units of the army, the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, approached Moses and said, "Your servants have counted the soldiers under our command, and not one of us is missing. So we have brought to the Lord an offering of the gold articles each man acquired, armlets, bracelets, rings, earrings, and necklaces, to make atonement for ourselves before the Lord." So Moses and Eleazar the priest received from them all the articles made out of gold. All the gold that the commanders of thousands and of hundreds presented as an offering to the Lord weighed 16,750 shekels. Each of the soldiers had taken plunder for himself. And Moses and Eleazar the priest received the gold from the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, and brought it into the tent of meeting as a memorial for the Israelites before the Lord. Okay, that's it for Numbers. Now we're into 1 Corinthians, starting in chapter 9. Am I not free? Am I not an apostle? Have I not seen Jesus our Lord? Are you yourselves not my workmanship in the Lord? Even if I am not an apostle to others, surely I am to you. For you are the seal of my apostleship in the Lord. This is my defense to those who scrutinize me. Have we no right to food and drink? Have we no right to take along a believing wife, as do the other apostles and the Lord's brothers and Cephas? Or are Barnabas and I the only apostles who must work for a living? Who serves as a soldier at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard and does not eat its fruit? Who tends a flock and does not drink of its milk? Do I say this from a human perspective? Doesn't the law say the same thing? For it is written in the law of Moses, "Do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain." Is it about oxen that God is concerned? Isn't he actually speaking on our behalf? Indeed, this was written for us, because when the plowman plows and the thresher threshes, they should also expect to share in the harvest. If we have sown spiritual seed among you, is it too much for us to reap a material harvest from you? If others have this right to your support, shouldn't we have it all the more? But we did not exercise this right. Instead, we put up with anything rather than hinder the gospel of Christ. Do you not know that those who work in the temple eat of its food, and those who serve at the altar partake of its offerings? In the same way, the Lord has prescribed that those who preach the gospel should receive their living from the gospel. But I have not used any of these rights, and I am not writing this to suggest that something be done for me. Indeed, I would rather die than let anyone nullify my boast. Yet when I preach the gospel, I have no reason to boast, because I am obligated to preach. Woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. If my preaching is voluntary, I have a reward, but if it is not voluntary, I am still entrusted with a responsibility. What then is my reward? That in preaching the gospel I may offer it free of charge, and so not use up my rights in preaching it. Though I am free of obligation to anyone, I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, to win those under the law. To those without the law I became like one without the law, though I am not outside the law of God, but am under the law of Christ, to win those without the law. To the weak I became weak, to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, so that I may share in its blessings. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way as to take the prize. Everyone who competes in the games trains with strict discipline. They do it for a crown that is perishable, but we do it for a crown that is imperishable. Therefore, I do not run aimlessly. I do not fight like I am beating the air. No, I discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our forefathers were all under the cloud, and that they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them, for they were struck down in the wilderness. These things took place as examples to keep us from craving evil things as they did. Do not be idolaters as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and to drink and got up to indulge in revelry. We should not commit sexual immorality as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 of them died. We should not test Christ, as some of them did and were killed by snakes. And do not complain, as some of them did, and were killed by the destroying angel. Now these things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the fulfillment of the ages has come. So the one who thinks he is standing firm should be careful not to fall. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide an escape so that you can stand up under it. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak to reasonable people. Judge for yourselves what I say. Is not the cup of blessing that we bless a participation in the blood of Christ? And is not the bread that we break a participation in the body of Christ? Because there is one loaf, we who are many are one body, for we all partake of the one loaf. Consider the people of Israel. Are not those who eat the sacrifices fellow partakers in the altar? Am I suggesting then that food sacrificed to an idol is anything, or that an idol is anything? No, but the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God. And I do not want you to participate. I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too. You cannot partake in the table of the Lord and the table of demons too. Are we trying to provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but not everything is edifying. No one should seek his own good, but the good of others. Eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. If an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat anything set before you without raising questions of conscience. But if someone tells you this food was offered to idols, then do not eat it, for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience, the other one's conscience, I mean, not your own. For why should my freedom be determined by someone else's conscience? If I partake in the meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that for which I give thanks? So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. Do not become a stumbling block, whether to Jews or Greeks or the church of God, as I also try to please everyone in all I do. For I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, that they may be saved. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So we come back to Balaam, son of Beor, in the final Numbers reading, and we now in First Corinthians are coming back around to the conversation of eating food that was dedicated to idols. So there is some overlap between modern spirituality and these things to consider. Um, and if you want to know more about that, you can look back on my sermon series on First Corinthians last year in the podcast. You can also reach out to me at pastor.rickman@gmail.com. That concludes our time of reading today. I hope it's been a blessing to you, and I'll plan on seeing you tomorrow. Bye.